So hello everyone, I thought I had this morning was all three of my travel adventures this year, by the time I complete the year, will have been on ships. And I don't know whether that's sending me in the wrong direction. Okay, so first, what are these travel adventures this year? Well, one was a trip to Lake Garda, then a med cruise, then my Havila Voyages trip up and down the Norway coast, and then one still to happen, which is a trip to the Canary Islands and back from Southampton. And I guess what I'm feeling is, where did that come from? How did I get into a state of having three travel adventures that are effectively cruises, though Havila Voyages is quite different. You can see how that pans out on the videos being released at the minute. So I guess we first have to ask how I got there, am I happy with it, and should it remain the case for the future? And as you'll move into this topic, you'll notice I am on the beach in one of the last probably few warm days before we hit it being dark when you wake up and dark when you finish work. And as I said in another video recently, which I'll link up at the top, this is the first time I've been in the beach in probably at least a year, just because obviously it's something I used to do with Daisy Dog, and I've decided late in 2025, probably as time runs out, to get back into it. But anyway, holiday adventures via ship. So how did cruises get actually started? Well, you can blame Norwegian Cruise Line. I got sucked into the advertising of their offering under sort of two pillars. One, how they were really pushing in 2019 their solo cruiser offering, and two, the Norwegian Bliss. The two sort of tied together. The solo cruising thing appealed in that up until people started talking about that, and NCL was the one that sort of was my lead in, cruising seemed to be associated with groups, people trying to make friends on discussion boards before they even got on ship, and it just didn't seem for me. But when I looked into the NCL Bliss, you know, it's expansive promenade, wraparound promenade, it's solo cabins, the fact that all the restaurants are just operate like they do in the city and you just go up and, you know, there's no sense of organised dining, meant I wanted to give that ship a go. So in 2019 I gave that ship a go, went on a trip to Disneyland and then did a second portion from Los Angeles on the Norwegian Bliss to Mexico and back, and it was amazing. Now that probably would have been the end of it but for COVID, and I think a lot of people are still only now, you know, 3 years afterwards, reconciling, readjusting how their life looked coming out of COVID and reassessing it. And one of the things that happened for me was doing things by ship seemed to take over my travel experiences to some extent, and there are probably a few reasons for that. So I think there's two reasons. One reason was purely practical, right? 2022, we could travel again internationally after 2 years of not being able to, and that's great, but flights just seemed absolute chaos. I had people who were traveling on business and whatever else, and they were getting held up in airports, delayed for a day, and I thought, you know what? I used to be a person who just packed some carry-on, jumped on a plane, didn't really think about it much. I'd got to that place after my divorce, right? But I thought, you know what, this seems too much pain. So then I learned I could go to Norway and see some scenery from Southampton and back to Southampton, no flight. So I did that. And that got me into, I guess that got me into the scenic cruising. I realised there were some places that you don't only visit them by ship. All these places have valid things you can do, obviously on land, don't get me wrong. But there is some advantage in doing it via ship, hopefully as well, right? So obviously I've done Alaska. There are certainly some elements of Alaska that are best done by ship, but I also combined it with a land portion, right? I've done, obviously, Norway again, the epic Havila Voyages, amazing. And I also did Norway again and around Iceland to get in some Iceland locations, and that's all great. But I have also done a med cruise And the cruise that's still to happen this year is the Canary Islands at back. I would categorise those two as the closest I come, especially the Canary Islands cruise, the closest I come to like a beach holiday. It's my alternate, right? I'm just getting out somewhere, relaxing, not trying to do anything crazy. But having blocked up 3 of them this year, I started to think, am I in danger of falling into a comfort trap and missing out on the things I used to do? So I do work in marketing technology, and we do have some travel clients. And without naming names, one of them classifies what they offer for their country in different ways, right? And one of them is light adventure. And that's what I like to describe that I'd fallen into on my travel adventures, right? I'd broken away from what I would call going on holiday, you know, going somewhere, staying primarily in a hotel, you know, and soaking up the sun, maybe going to a theme park or something, to actually getting out into mountains, doing, you know, paragliding off a valley wall, you know, all that sort of stuff. So light adventure, you know, not crazy. I'm not into extreme sports. They're all stuff the average person can do. But it's more than just reading a book in the sun, days go by, right? Light adventure. I think that client describes that very well. And I was like, that's what I do. But have I done any of that this year? The answer's no. And that's because I've fallen into this cruise trap. Now, don't get me wrong, Iceland, Norway, and Alaska, absolutely awesome. But they inevitably become tour-based holidays, right? You have time relaxing on the ship, reading books, that's great. But anything off the ship is on a coach, do a tour, come back, get on the ship. That isn't what I used to be doing. I used to be doing my own independent trains, you know, car driving, getting to sort of different points of interest and hiking around. I mean, the hiking around the Jungfrau region was absolutely epic, and that just felt more independent and light adventure. And I'm starting to consider, do I need to put a break on the cruising, or have I reached its natural endpoint? Because it's no longer, it's at risk of turning me back into going on holiday, right? I've just swapped hotels for a ship and a theme park for organised tours of the country. Now, don't get me wrong, those organised tours are great. They're sometimes a good way to see things, but they lack that light adventure sort of appeal. So I think my conclusion is, what I've done has been absolutely fantastic, but I need to be very careful of what I do next, because I think I've sort of, shall we say, got to the bottom of the list of the key scenic cruising sort of locations, unless I start going on a New Zealand scenic cruise or some scenic cruising in Asia that I'm not aware of. But you get my point. Norway, Alaska, Iceland, you know, western sort of key scenic cruising locations. And I don't want to fall into the trap of doing holiday-based cruises, because they're not for me. You know, even though I'm doing one at the end of this year, they tend to be when I just need to get out of this situation for a bit and relax. That's when I do them. So, yeah. So I feel cruising is coming to a bit of a natural end. Well, this is the thing, right? I think with cruising, my feeling is I need to go big or go home. And by that I mean is I need to do something absolutely crazy, like a really long one in a crazy area, like South America or something, or I need to just stop. And I do think to some extent that feeling that I need to go big or go home on cruising is actually influencing other areas of my travel adventures, in that I'm starting to think, you know, do I need to up my game? But of course, the problem I have, still working, can't retire, sadly. And so I'm a part-time traveller, right? I like to think of myself as a light adventure part-time traveller, in the sense that I can only go on my PTO. That's all I can do. 2 weeks, 3 weeks to the push. So when I say go big, I start thinking, right, a really long one for a month to interesting places, or something like a true expedition cruise. Now all of these start costing a lot, so you know they're a significant cost, but you could argue if that's the only thing I did that year, it's not that much different to going on the 2 or 3 things I normally go on. So you know, in theory it's financially possible, but then that gets me thinking about, should I be my traditional non-ship based stuff, should that be longer and bigger? I don't know, that's something to think about. But I think the true conclusion of this video is in 2026, I want to get a bit back to some of the things I did before COVID. Cruising was an output of wanting to see certain scenic locations and of originally avoiding planes out of COVID. But I think it might have reached its natural conclusion and I need to get back to some light adventure.